25-26 value for money as well. So I think that is achievable, but as I said, it depends on what action is taken to, as I said, a commission investigation, I think, is what is required to look into some of those areas. In terms of the financial statements audit, the backstop date for the financial statements for 25-26 is actually the end of January 26. As EY, we're not planning to work to that backstop date. We're planning to try and get all of our work done by the end of November as well, to align with the value for money reporting deadline. Obviously, that is dependent on your predecessor auditor actually issuing opinions on those previous years, and then us being in a position to be able to issue opinions on 23-24 and then 24-25. So I think that all of that reporting is likely to be in some months' time rather than in immediate reporting.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Headley.
Thank you, Chairman. If I'm mumbling more than usual, I've just spent the afternoon at the dentist. You mentioned the backstop dates, which was going to be one of my questions, so we'll gloss over that. The previous auditors, you've mentioned twice now. What's the level of confidence that they will complete the work that you would anticipate they should do? And if they don't complete it, how will you move forward? And my supplementary question would be around local government reorganisation. Are you likely to be able to get to a point where, if LGR takes place in 27-28, that this council will have a clean audit report?
I'll probably take that last question first because that's probably the easiest one to answer. So based on the LARIG timetable that I just highlighted to you and the position the council is in, I don't think there will be an unqualified opinion by 27-28. Therefore, I think it's very important that we do focus the audit resources on the areas that will be most important in terms of LGR, which is around the balance sheet, and in particular the levels of reserves. The levels of reserves is definitely the most difficult area to rebuild assurance over because that's driven by all of the in-year transactions. And because the council has had a number of years disclaimed opinions, that means there is no assurance over those in-year transactions and then therefore no assurance over the reserves balance resulting from that. So that's an area we'll need to give some very careful consideration to in terms of whether that's where we focus our audit efforts to try to rebuild, in terms of looking at those transactions that would impact on reserves and how we can get that assurance. In terms of how likely BDO are likely to conclude, I probably need to ask the finance team to comment on that. But before that, it's probably just worth clarifying the reliance that we are placing on BDO and what our expectations are, and that we are not placing any reliance on the financial statements work because they have issued disclaimed opinions, I think. And so therefore there is nothing in terms of financial statement perspective that would give us any assurance. What we do need to consider is their value for money reporting and whether that identifies any additional issues that we need to consider. We are aware that obviously they have commented on the council's borrowing related to out of area investment properties, and that is an area that we will also need to form a view on because the council does still retain a number of those properties and the associated borrowing. But as I said, we've also highlighted a wider risk of weakness in relation to governance and financial sustainability in relation to the very high levels of borrowing that the council does have and the fact that those levels are increasing. I don't know if the finance team wants to comment on the likelihood of BDO signing, because obviously they will have a more up-to-date position on where that's at.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tina, do you want to comment on that point?
Yeah, so just an update on where we are with BDO. They obviously came to the last Audit and Risk Committee where we got to that position, and we're waiting for the letters of representation. We've seen the draft. We've provided some comments back on that, so we didn't think from a finance team that was reflective of where we got to. So we're waiting for those updated, and hopefully that once those letters of representations are done, then we can sign off those accounts, and then that gives a basis on which Debbie can work from.
Thank you. Any other members got any questions for Debbie? Yeah, Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Debbie, are you still there? Because you're not on our screen.
Oh, I am, yes.
Oh, you are? Okay, that's fine. Could you go into a bit of detail then, please, about your concerns around the governance arrangements? Could you do that?
I think I probably provided all the detail I can at the moment. As I said, we've undertaken our procedures, and we've outlined in the report the key areas that we've currently identified that we feel need further work, and that indicate weaknesses in arrangements. So, as I said, there's a limited assurance internal audit report, which obviously indicates significant weaknesses in controls within the council. That is a cause of concern. We don't very often see limited assurance internal audit reports. So that's definitely of concern to us. We've also identified some issues with contract management procurement in terms of potential not complying with the council's own policies and procedures, which could therefore expose the council to financial risk, but also service delivery and quality of services risk. As I said, we've noted quite a high level of member complaints in the council compared to other local authorities that we see. And Sempra Homes, as I said, that definitely represents a risk. We are seeing that in a number of councils actually where subsidiaries are making losses, and that's therefore impacting on the council where the council is providing financial support to those bodies. And then finally, kind of the levels of borrowing, the capital programme, the investment properties. We recognise the ambitions of the council, but we also recognise the fact that high levels of borrowing expose the council to risk in terms of both the levels of interest repayments that have to be made and the fact that those borrowings have to be repaid in future years. So it's very important to look at what that borrowing is taken out for and what it therefore is the likelihood of the capital repayments being able to be made in future years, what is supporting that projection. So we'll be looking at some of those areas ourselves that fall into the audit remit, but as I said, some of the other areas we think the council itself needs to commission an investigation to look into.
Councillor Wise.
Thank you for that. And I think obviously we are going to be bringing up some of the internal audit stuff this evening. We have a report on that, so I'm sure we'll be discussing some bits in detail in the report that we've got. But it's obviously quite concerning about what you're saying in terms of the external auditor, in bits that you are particularly concerned about, the level of borrowing, perhaps the way procurement processes have been followed. I'm sure officers will answer that at a later time, but I feel it is quite concerning that you have concerns around that in your report this evening. I just wanted to touch on one thing which is quite separate. I just wondered your opinion on this, because we have discussed in the past when BDO have been here, obviously about the cost of audit and everything else. I just wondered if you had seen an article in the Financial Times on the 6th of February this year, in which a big auditor, KPMG, one of the big fours, such as yourself, actually took their auditor to task about the cost of their own audit, in which they were saying that the KPMG, their argument was that technology was being used and AI was being used, so therefore should justify a fee cut for its own audit. I'm just wondering of where we are and how you're using technology and AI in order to do our audits at the moment, and whether or not the fees that are backed onto that are correct, rather than sort of people power. You are doing it quicker rather than having people sitting around doing it manually.
So EY has been investing in technology for a number of years. So we have quite a lot of digital audit products. We do use AI to a limited and cautious extent, because obviously there are risks also associated with AI. But we do have things like our own co-pilot, which definitely helps facilitate, analysis of lengthy reports, access to information, etc. I'm sure you're very well aware, there are dangers with AI, and everything still has to be checked. So we've got lots of internal processes around that. I would note that, like I said, we've got our data analytics processes, which help us in terms of analysing the council's data. So particularly we tend to use that for things like payroll, where we can, rather than testing hundreds of different payroll items, we will use that to basically look for kind of anomalies, unusual transactions. So what it doesn't necessarily reduce the cost of an audit. What it enables us to do is to be more risk focused. And rather than just testing lots and lots of transactions, it enables us to hone in on those transactions that are more risky, that look more unusual, and therefore the auditors spend their time looking at the areas that are more judgmental and that need that thought process rather than a kind of analytical computer skill. So it helps target the audit work, it doesn't necessarily reduce it significantly, I would say. But there are some savings, but equally investing in technology costs as well, and therefore the cost of that investment has to be borne as well as part of the audit fees. But I guess just in terms of the point of audit fees, you'll be very well aware that we don't set the fees, that PSAA set the fees for each individual body. There is a scale fee variation process where we feel that we've had to undertake additional work to identify risks on either the financial statements or in relation to value for money. And that goes through a process of PSA reviewing and determining any such fee variations that we request. I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does from your point of view, of course. I think it's clear because obviously this article when it came out, so it is all public knowledge. It's in the Financial Times, but basically they said that there was an agreement in 2025 that KPMG's internal audit was paid in sterling, but they're paid in dollars for their company for this. Sorry, it's quoted in dollars, but paid in sterling. Was that their fee was £357,000 for their 2025 audit. After complaining about the fees in 24, which was $416,000, it was a 14% reduction. Grant Thornton, who are KPMG's auditors, have declined to comment on this. But there has been some things. KPMG's behind-the-scenes argument that new technology could justify fee cuts for its own audit could embolden companies to press their accounts for similar reductions. Now, I'm sure some people in Ernst & Young must have seen this particular report. I'm sure there are senior partners in Ernst & Young who regularly have the Financial Times delivered to them and read to them by their PAs. So I'm just wondering, obviously we're sitting here as a council, as something to follow up on, of whether or not that beforehand, or maybe with BDO as well with theirs, if they're now using AI for a lot of their audits, whereas they weren't before, there may be an argument that requesting a fee reduction because now they're being more efficient in what they're doing, or not efficient by not using it. That's my point. And then, of course, that will help your value for money statement.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Any other members got any questions for Debbie? Well, I've got a question around the borrowing that you've pointed out, Debbie, as a potential issue. Obviously, we've had quite a robust debate within the council in recent months around the debt position and the things that we borrow to invest in do on the whole make a profit that helps the council's sort of financial position quite a lot. Is that sort of side of things taken into account when making this judgment, or is it simply looking at how much is going out and not what else is coming in?
We would definitely be looking at the treasury management strategy and the reasons for the borrowing. So, as I said, this is our kind of risk of significant weakness at the moment. It is not saying that it is a significant weakness. What we're flagging is that we need to undertake more work to understand the council's borrowing, what that borrowing relates to, and therefore what risks there are. So an example might be if the council borrowed to purchase an investment property, let's just use that example, and therefore you're assuming that the income from that investment property will enable you to repay that borrowing. If, for example, the rental periods of the leases that property has got on it are significantly shorter than the term of your borrowing, there could be a risk that at the moment that is covering the borrowing, but if actually subsequently those leases are not renewed and you struggle to actually therefore get appropriate tenants for those properties, then that exposes the council to a risk. So those are the sorts of things we'll be looking at in terms of what have you borrowed for, and then what risk does that potentially present. So it's not for us to replace our decisions with the council for the councils in terms of what your aims and strategies are, but it's for us to make sure that when you do take out that borrowing, it's clearly reported what the risks are, and that you're assessing, as I said, upsides and downsides in terms of future. And it's very much looking at the future is what we'd be looking at.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any other members have any questions for Debbie while here? No. Okay, well, thank you very much for for joining us, Debbie. That's great to see that we're getting the ball rolling on this one, and yeah, hopefully we'll hear from you on the next updates soon. Is there a vote on that? Or is it just no? Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. That item was just for noting. So thank you, and
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for facilitating. Thank you for facilitating me joining remotely, because it's quite a busy day today. So I'm actually still in Cambridge. So thank you very much.
no worries. Hopefully we'll get to meet you in person soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So on to item number 5 now, which is Capital and Investment Strategy Q3 report for 25-26, and that is Rachel. And can I say welcome back, Rachel, from maternity leave? It's good to have you back.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, councillors. So this report sets out the Q3 position in respect of the capital and investment strategy. This covers the period from 1st of April to 31st of December 2025. The strategy for 25-26 was agreed by Council as part of the budget setting report in February 2025. The strategy sets out a framework for officers to work within and primarily deals with the management of the Council's debt position and the management of the day-to-day cash flows. All of the activities for the period covered by this report were carried out within the requirements of the strategy. Enclosure 1 in this report is the main strategy report. Some of the main points that I just want to draw your attention to in this enclosure are the actuals to date of 52.7 million against a working budget of 52.3 million, which is a negative variance of 0.4 million. This is mainly due to the timing of acquisitions and new builds in the HRA. Budget profiling has been looked at and amended for this. The main difference in original to working budget is due to the carry forwards from 24-25 and the budget provision for the purchase of Southgate House. The net debt position has increased by 22.9 million during the period, with a closing position of 661.5 million. Gross debt at the end of the period was 688.5 million, which is a reduction of 2.1 million. Cash balances held has reduced from 52 million to 27 million. And the table on page 38 shows the in-year movement in borrowing. In the period covered by the report, 12 million of PWLB borrowing and 95 million in short-term local authority loans were repaid, and 108 million of new local authority loans were taken out, which results in a net increase of 1 million. The CFR expected year-end position, which is shown on page 39, is 14.3 million lower than forecast. This is mainly due to the debt repayment as a result of a commercial asset sale. Investment of surplus cash generated 0.9 million in interest, an average rate of 4.71%, and this rate was higher than expected when the budget was set, but this may change for the remainder of the year. Enclosure 2 provides this information in the form of a dashboard, and Enclosure 3 is the budgeted and expected outturn of performance indicators as required to be reported under the code. After tonight, this report will be presented to Cabinet, and any comments or observations that you have will be considered in preparing for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any members want to start us off? Yeah, Councillor Myers.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your report, and welcome back from maternity leave. Congratulations. So, rather than sort of the borrowing has increased throughout that, but I'm a bit concerned about the cash flow figures. Just with the amount of cash held down from 52 to 22, you say, or 23? 27? 27? 25. Sorry, 25. I do apologise, wrote my number down wrong. Right, so from 52...
Oh, sorry, it's moved by 25, it's gone down.
Right, okay, so if the borrowing has increased, and obviously to take on sites for temporary accommodation, where's the cash gone?
So the change in cash flow is through the usual course of business, all the different ins and outs that we have during the year. So the reduction in the amount that we are carrying is due to the fact that we have invested. We have reduced the amount of our short-term our PWLB borrowing, and therefore we're not carrying that.
Right. So we've used the cash to pay off the PWLB early.
We haven't used it to pay it off early, but when we came to the end of some of our loans, we paid them off and we've not renewed them due to not needing to.
Blimey, that's all I'm going to say.
Councillor Wise, any other members? Yeah, Councillor Murphy.
Going on from that, is that because we haven't renewed them? Because if I was doing that, I would be sort of rubbing my hands and saying we'll book a holiday because we've now got some money, or are we just in that because the flow of money, we're just in that position at the moment, and in a couple of months' time we will have to go and re-borrow to satisfy that gap?
So due to the disposal of one of our commercial assets, we don't need to carry as much borrowing at this time. So that's why we were able to not renew.
So party time.
Thank you. Any other members? Yeah, Councillor Wise.
I'm sorry, I'm adding up one and one and making 3 here. So we've sold off. Which one was it? Southgate House, which was brought up at the last audit meeting. I believe it was Southgate House. No, sorry, not Southgate House. Sorry, it was the property in Northampton.
Yes, Solihull.
Sorry, Solihull. Knew we were going with S. Sorry, in Solihull. Do apologise. Which obviously did make a return for the council. Then obviously that paid off some debt to sell it off, and in order to that, and obviously the profit came in. But then we've still got this issue with, in my view, where we've got 27 million quid in cash that's just gone. Now, I do understand the day-to-day lending between local authorities. It happens all the time. I do understand that, and I understand the rationale why. If you've got spare cash, might as well invest it for 1%, 2% here for a period of, I don't know, a week, a day, 3 months, whatever. I do understand that. But this is a very, very large chunk of money, and of cash, and I am a bit concerned that, as Councillor Murphy, I think, tried to allude to, but didn't quite follow on, was the fact that, okay, we don't need to borrow anymore because we don't need to retake out those loans because we've satisfied that, but we've used cash, which I assume is from the reserves that we hold. Is that correct, or is that not correct?
So I think it's in our overall management of our cash flows. So we've obviously got some borrowing that we've had and we've repaid that. And then we look at the overall requirement of what we need in terms of managing the day-to-day. And we've actually, instead of borrowing for money, we've used our internal cash resource based on our level of reserves to try and manage that. So we're doing less borrowing because we're using internal cash resources, which means we pay less interest. And we forecast cash flows on an ongoing basis, and we try and predict when we might need to borrow, and where if we don't need to borrow and we've got spare cash, then we invest that through temporary money markets to try and make the most interest from what money we've got available. Does that help?
It does.
Yeah.
Just to add, we're using our reserves. We're using our cash resources. So there's a differentiation between those two.
Right, with that in mind, if we got £14 million back, so we've managed to find 13 million in cash to make that gap of 20, we repaid 27, didn't we? If I remember rightly, or 23. The cash reserve's gone down by 22 million. Yeah. So how much debt have we paid off? Is that the whole of the 22 million?
So we have paid off 12 million of long-term PWLB debt, which is what we didn't renew, and we have paid off 95 million of local authority short-term loans, but then we have taken out new short-term loans to replace some of that.
Okay, thank you. Any other members want to come in on this? Councillor Myers is thinking about it. Yep.
I mean, clearly now I'm quite glad we had the external auditor on, because it's coming to me, and I'm sure if you wanted to do a briefing for all of us about this afterwards, then at a later date, then I'm sure that will be, I think members here would be perfectly acceptable for that. But it just seems to me that whilst clearing off some debt is obviously a good thing to wipe if you have the cash reserves, you're then having to go and then borrow to replace some of the borrowing that you've done, which whilst in the long term, because I know some of the PWLB stuff is like sort of 60, 70 years. Now, you said you've paid off a one which is a long-term one, but surely you want to be paying off the ones which are, coming up due, rather than sort of 50, 60 years down the line, because some are 50, 60 years down the line with some interest payments, and I'm just a bit, and manageable, but I'm just a little bit concerned that we haven't quite got to grips yet of where we are. Now, the report is very lovely with graphs and everything else, but we're not all trained accountants, we're not all trained financial things, and you go through them, you have a look, and I'm just struggling to understand where you're saying we've paid off borrowing for local authorities, but yeah, we've borrowed more to replace that, but yet then we also give out money to send out so we can earn interest on it, and yet we've used money to pay off long-term debt to reduce the cash that we've got, when we've got big things over the horizon, such as LGR, and surely you want to keep, your reserves, or sorry, not reserves. I do apologise for using that word, but what's in your bank account in terms of cash flow stable in case of issues down the line of implementing LGR if and when it happens. I hope that does make sense. I hope that where I'm trying to come across from. I hope that is helpful. Maybe not.
So the loans that we have repaid, they were long-term ones that had come to the end. So we were repaying them when they were due, and it's just that where we would often look to refinance those if we needed to with a new loan, we in this instance haven't needed to for some of those. In terms of the reason for taking out shorter-term local authority borrowing instead, it's as you say, there's things on the horizon, and it's to keep that liquidity available for us rather than tying ourselves in with long-term borrowing. As you say, some of those previously have been for much longer terms. And there was another question you asked, sorry, which I've now, hopefully that answers part of that question.
Yeah, it does. I just think that we're going to need a briefing to go through this properly, of what's there and what's not, because obviously we are lay councils. We're not professionals in accountancy and everything else. We value and appreciate your advice on what's going on, but when we have a report come forwards, a week before, I feel like we need a bit more of an in-depth briefing on exactly what the Treasury management position is and how we deal with that. I think that's acceptable, Chair.
Yeah, I think certainly when issues like this come up, it's useful to have a briefing beforehand. But yeah, are there any other members wish to ask? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I meant a separate briefing after this, so schedule one into the calendar so we can get a full.
Yeah. I think that's sensible. Something we can take up offline. But are there any members have any more on this one? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Rachel. And we'll move on to item number 6. That item was for noting. Yeah. Great. So yeah, item number 6, which is internal audit and counter progress update 2025-26, and that is Mike.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides the committee with an update on internal audit and counter fraud activity from April 25 till January 26. I will cover 3 key areas tonight: progress in delivering the 25-26 audit plan, performance of service areas in implementing internal audit recommendations, and counter fraud activities and outcomes to date. Dealing with progress against the audit plan, Since the last update to this committee, 6 additional audits have been completed. A further 9 audits are in progress, including 3 at a draft report stage. Some audits have been rescheduled or replaced due to service capacity or ongoing transformation projects. If we can deal with the completed audits, the 6 completed audits, I'll just give you a general flavour of what we found in relation to those 6 audits. So business rates, this received substantial assurance, strong controls were in place, and we made no recommendations in relation to this piece of work. Council tax received adequate assurance, 6 moderate actions raised around proactive identification of changes in circumstances. Operational savings, this received adequate assurance. Improvements have been made, but inconsistency remains in applying the savings process. Complaints, this was adequate assurance. The process broadly working, but requires strengthening around lessons learned and monitoring. Section 106 agreements, again this received adequate assurance. The framework is in place, but heavy reliance on manual processes and gaps in governance. Parks and open spaces, this received limited assurance. Significant weaknesses were identified in tree management, play areas and water safety. There's a reactive rather than a proactive approach, limited resources and no tree asset management system. And there's a lot of reliance on spreadsheets. The working group has actually received this report and received this on the 7th of January, and James Hendry was in attendance to discuss what measures he was being put in place to address the identified weaknesses. Asset disposal, this received adequate assurance. There's a strong framework in place which is working. So in terms of general themes and emergent issues we identified, there's a lot of reliance on manual processes in several services. This remains a key risk for us, and there's workforce constraints, both affecting services' ability to deliver their day job and for us to get in and actually do the audits ourselves. So some of the audits, as I said earlier, have been pushed back because we couldn't get in and do those audits. Turning, as I made to recommendations now in terms of implementation. As at the 10th of February, there were 89 active recommendations, 49, which is 55%, were overdue, and this is against the original due date. So this is the date that we agreed in the original report when we issued the report. If we look at it in terms of different metrics, because obviously recommendations and due dates get pushed back, so if we look at it in terms of revised dates, there's only 29 recommendations that are overdue. There are no critical recommendations that are currently active. In terms of major recommendations, 11 remain outstanding. Several will show repeated slippage. So if I may turn to counter fraud update now. So in terms of the summary activity, there's been 600 new referrals for the year to date. We've closed 650 cases and 166 cases remain under investigation. In terms of, for me, the important figures to look at is the number of properties that we've recovered, which is 7, and the number of housing applications that were cancelled, which is 17. So this means houses that are actually in need or going to the people that are in desperate need for those properties. So we've actually, as I say, returned 7 properties as a result of illegal subletting, and they come back to the council. In terms of financial outcomes, we're reporting cashable savings of £146,000 and 2.83 million in non-cashable savings. So in terms of the overall message around fraud activity levels remain high, particularly in relation to housing-related areas. Recoveries and prevention continue to provide strong value for money, especially through non-cashable savings. In conclusion, we're making good progress in delivering the audit plan, despite pressures across several services. Recommendation slippage remains a concern. And finally, counter-fraud work continues to deliver significant financial benefits and protect council resources. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Chris?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Mike, so first of all, some good fraud progress, so well done. I think that was, I think a thing from the last set of figures you put up, so well done. Could I just take you back to page 62, paragraph 2.4? It just feels like there isn't any real progress. in the year of compliance, which I think was written down. I wrote in my notes last April when it was set out. Some of the stuff that Debbie was talking about earlier, does this override some of your work that you're doing, or will it in the future? Do you know?
I think I come to this committee and most times I report issues around recommendation implementation. It's an ongoing concern for us that recommendations are not being implemented in line with the agreed dates, because the issues that we identify still remain outstanding. So the control issues and the concerns are still there until they're rectified. I mean, we only have 11 major recommendations. Quite a few of them are moderate or low, but those ones that are major recommendation priority need to be implemented as soon as possible. I mean, that is a concern for us. But I think it comes down to priorities. I mean, it is the year of compliance, and it's not just problems we see in relation to recommendations. There are updates in relation to PIs, risks and governance actions that Sarah will come on to later. So what we're seeing is perhaps a lack of compliance across the piece. It's not just in relation to audit recommendations, but for me, it does cause concern, because all that good work we put into identifying areas and actions are going unaddressed. And until such time as they are unaddressed, those weaknesses still persist. So for me, and probably for external audit, it's a concern.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Following on to that, what are we actually doing to try and improve this problem? Are we pushing the officers or the areas that need improving? And what are these officers coming back with? I mean, when I used to work for the jolly old bank and somebody came along and said, I want this done, we said, yes sir, and went and done it. You know, there was no argument about it. Why are these officers not getting it done? Simple as that.
I mean, I can't speak for officers, but in terms of what action we take, I go to corporate leadership team and highlight my concerns in terms of the number of outstanding recommendations. We also use a recommendation tracking system called Pentana, and that kicks out emails to people saying your recommendation's overdue now in terms of implementation. So there's triggers. So I think I'm doing as much as I can to force the issue and get those recommendations updated. I mean, I accept there are other priorities, and in some way, I suppose it's considered like a back office function in internal audit to some degree. Okay, it's important, but probably in the grand scheme of things, is it that important? I mean, there's lots of other things going on at the moment, and I can understand that. But it's important to, I suppose, highlight that until such time as I say those recommendations are addressed, those controls persist, and they need addressing. So we're trying to address it. We are, as I say, I keep banging the drum in effect at every meeting that I attend, and I also attend DMT meetings, divisional management team meetings, and also highlight the outstanding audit recommendations. So yeah, we're trying everything possible.
So would you say generally overall that it's a lack of resources that's causing the problem, if other priorities keep nipping in front? Because I understand that. I mean, I think, you know, in our personal lives we all want to do X, but if something happens, that's got to take priority. You go back to it and then something else happens, and then something else, and all of a sudden you think, I should really go and cut that grass, it's, you know, 2 foot high now, but I'll get round it this weekend if nothing happens. So is it a lack of resources, do you feel?
It's difficult to comment. I could perhaps pass that over to one of my officer colleagues. Perhaps Tina might want to come in at this point.
I think just to add, I mean, the year of compliance has been mentioned, and we have talked about that CLT because we're not getting the progress that we'd hoped to at the start of the year. So we've actually, is it the capacity at the assistant director level? So actually, should we make use of our manager network to help unlock some of those blockages, recognising some of the constraints and the priorities that Mike's referenced? So we are talking about it and what we can try and do to unlock some of that, because there is so much going on. So hopefully that will improve. It is on the agenda all of the time. So we are talking about it, but yeah, I recognise the comments that Mike has made.
Thank you. Councillor Myers.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Tina, for that sort of at the management level, because going through the report we can see that some of the authors aren't the assistant directors; they are managers who are replying and providing the notes. So I think it's good that those who have been delegated to certain tasks that are under their remit, such as looking at waste at the moment, with some of the things that are going on there. I just wanted to ask Mike a question. You say some of the dates have been pushed back and pushed back. But there's quite a lot on here which are due, well, Saturday. So the 28th of February. So I very much doubt that will happen. Do you have like a known list of sort of like, should we say, especially with the majors, the lows, you know, could be a small tweak here and there to get done. But obviously, we want to concern ourselves with the majors and the criticals. There were some criticals. I'm glad that they've been fulfilled. So well done to you and your team for doing that. But in terms of some of the majors, I mean, do we know who the main culprits are in terms of keep pushing dates back? And do we know, do they give particular reasons why the dates are being pushed back and back and back? I mean, there is one here which is a major, but it said the due date was the 12th of August 2022. So there is no other due date for that. Other than just says the procure contract is due to begin 14th of January 26, but yet there's no sort of due date issued in order to comply with of what we're concerned with. Now, if they're saying that the contract mobilisation is due to begin 14th of January, there should be an update about saying, well, we're getting on with it, and we should have another report. So, do you have a list of those, you know, who keep pushing dates back and back and back? And what do you think needs to be done to do so? I think I mentioned at a previous committee meeting that we need to have a joint letter from the audit committee to go to service departments to stress the need in the year of compliance, as Chris nicely says, and I have written in my book quite large year of compliance, in order to facilitate what we need to do to make sure that you have the assurance and that our external auditors have the assurance as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Appendix C provides a list of the current active live major priority recommendations. They're not all overdue in that, but I can provide a list of all overdue recommendations and to which managers they relate. I can put that in a future progress report, so you can see, as you said, the culprits in effect. So yeah, so at the moment you're just getting a list of the current active major recommendations, but you also get numbers in terms of overdue recommendations at Appendix B, I think it is. But yeah, I can generate whatever list you like in terms of actually giving you stats on who the culprits are or what service areas they relate to. I can practically give you anything you'd like to see. I mean, yeah, I mean, in terms of reasons, I mean, we look for valid reasons. We don't just push them back, but you know, what's a valid reason? If someone says I can't do this, and then you have to accept that's the reason behind it. I mean, short of getting out the thumb screws and interrogating them a bit further, I mean, I usually have to take their word for it and go, yes, okay, I accept your reason, or I have to push it back. But you know, it's got to be an element of trust in it, isn't there? If they're telling me that's the case, I have to accept their word for it. Okay, I'll push it back. But yeah, you expect in terms of the major recommendation priority, they would get like addressed within like 3 to 6 months, and when they're not, they've been hanging around like some of them like a couple of years. You've got to question what are the weaknesses that still persist in that system.
I mean, get you some thumb screws if you want. That's not a problem. There's a shop down the road, so it's not an issue. Thank you for that. I mean, in terms of how you chase them up and and the ones which are overdue. As I said, I mentioned the one in 2022. There's a couple there for 24 as well, which are overdue. Do you, as an internal audit team, pay closer attention to those, of which they're listed as major, for the fact that, okay, as I said about the 28th of February this year, they're due, but you know, it's unlikely to see that because it's the 26th today and it's a Saturday, so we'll be overdue by Monday. But do you and the internal audit team put kind of a stronger BDI on the issue that's going on, especially when they've been a couple of years out of date? Do you make priority over those to push and to try to get something done?
Yeah, for those that have been outstanding a long time, we are constantly chasing the managers and asking reasons why they're outstanding and push those. I mean, we have a Pentana recommendation tracking system. So that automatically sends out triggers to people to say your recommendation is overdue. Do you want to address it? And they keep getting an email, and until they implement it. So their inbox must be quite full by now. So, but yeah, it's key for us that the major priority recommendations get addressed. So we are chasing those people, and we also chase them in terms of evidence as well, because we need to confirm they're being implemented. We don't take their word 100%, so we then have to go out and retest. So we do ask for that evidence as well. And so yeah, we are constantly on their backs. But
Well, that's good to hear. Maybe no thumb screws required at the moment then.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Palmer.
Bit of a simple question from a very simple person. Are there any sanctions for people that don't perform and don't do as they should be doing?
Sanctions.
Not thumb screws.
There's a performance capability process for staff that are not performing. So if they're not performing their jobs or doing what is required of them, then in a way there are measures to be taken. But in terms of audit recommendations, we just raise it continually, and we would expect assistant directors or other directors to push managers to address recommendations. So we escalate it. That's supposed to the action is we escalate it, and then we expect senior management to address the issue with their staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? I want to ask about what is we get a lot of tables and graphs and things in these reports every meeting, and my favourite one every time is always the forward progress update, because it shows just how much this council is actually working to tackle frauds. This time certainly the non-cashable savings are very high, and well done to the team for that. But when we see that the council's making a lot of both cashable and non-cashable savings, that generally means that fraud's going up, because we wouldn't be making the savings if there wasn't fraud to tackle. So is that sort of a general is that assumption correct, and are we seeing more fraud that this council needs to tackle on a sort of general basis?
I think there's peaks and troughs. It depends. It goes up and down, swings and roundabouts. But I mean, I wouldn't say there's more fraud. You hope to get to a point in time that you've weeded it all out, and it will start to dip, and numbers will go down in terms of referrals and number of cases. We're not seeing any dip in referrals at the moment, so there is probably quite a lot of fraud out there. But I think we see it all the time in the national news and press. You know, frauds and scams are quite current at the moment. So I don't, and also the current economic climate, I think, there's pressures on people, and some people will commit fraud and some won't. But you know, you hope, like, we've got all the robust controls in place to address, and we investigate. And you think at some point in time, it will start to, once we get the message out there that basically we've got a zero tolerant approach to fraud, and we will investigate fraud, well, people will probably think twice about undertaking such activity, but not currently.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Murphy.
Obviously, in these investigations and highlighting fraud and catching people with fraud, how much are we actually learning from the process, and what are we managing to put more checks to make the whole system more robust to stop, hopefully, so much fraud in the future, preferably none, but as much fraud in the future as possible. The other question I just was going to say, which you've already mentioned, is obviously you feel that at the moment the economic climate isn't helping matters, but obviously the first question is the one.
Yeah, there's very much a lessons learned approach with service departments. So my fraud manager goes out on a weekly basis and has monthly, quarterly updates with all the service departments in terms of how they're addressing fraud and what additional controls they could put in place. So we try to encourage proactive measures undertaken by service departments and understand, you know, when you get a housing application, what checks and vetting you need to do on that application before you approve it. So it's very much an education process whereby we talk to service departments and we highlight to them in terms of what the checks and balances they need to do, and also we learn from other local authorities in terms of what fraud they're uncovered. But we're in constant dialogue with all the service departments in relation, mainly housing and Revs and Bens, highlighting to them the fraud risks and what potentially additional measures they need to put in place. We've done a piece of work around change of circumstances because we tend to rely on people telling us that they've had a change of circumstances, but we need to be more proactive and go out there and understand, have their circumstances change? I mean, do they need the benefits they previously applied for? Should they be still getting council tax reduction? Because, you know, we have in the past relied on them to inform us there's been a change of circumstances, but we need to take more proactive measures in relation to fraud, actually asking the question, doing some background checks, you know, not just waiting for the resident to tell us that actually my circumstances have changed. So we are doing a lot more proactive measures in relation to service departments to actually highlight the fraud and identify the fraud in the first place.
Yeah, thank you. Any other members on this item? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mike. That's comprehensive as always, and that item was for noting. Now on to item number... where are we? Item number 7, which is Annual Governance Statement, Action Plan and Assurance Update Q3, and that is Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to give the committee the outcome of the Q3 assurance process, which is surrounding the effectiveness and compliance with the Council's governance arrangements, and an update on the progress in respect of our annual governance statement action plan. So obviously each quarter we reconsider the effectiveness of our governance arrangements based on risk, which in turn helps us to provide an evidence base for the production of the annual governance statement each year, and also to bring to members' attentions any issues that may arise during the year which could impact the annual governance statement. So enclosure number 1 contains details of the progress made against the action plan. The highlights to bring to your attention are that the information governance and the publication schemes actions have now been completed. You'll also note that the partnership action is showing as 0% progress. However, the Executive Director of Strategy, People and Transformation has now been appointed, and he will be taking responsibility for reviewing the current ownership of our key partnerships. As he has only recently taken up his post, he'll also need some time to assess the existing capacity within his directorate and consider whether appropriate appointments to fill any identified gaps are needed where necessary to support this work. So it will probably be carried over to next year, but there will be an action plan to address that. In relation to the Q3 assurance process, the key areas of concerns are things like the lack of timely updates, which Mike's already picked up on, so around our risks, audit recommendations and governance matters, failure to provide timely and accurate information on the Council's risk and assets, which could lead to inappropriate insurance cover or unrealistic timescales to set up insurance when needed, with compliance with the project and programme management framework, and also the audit engagement and capacity constraints. So these have all been discussed at CLT prior to coming to committee, and there are action plans that are currently being considered. So these include, as Tina's already mentioned, so engaging the managers network in the year of compliance, establishing the executive leadership team now that all the executive directors are in post, and HR will be undertaking a project around the role of the manager, where they'll be looking at the key responsibilities and expectations for the roles. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Hadley?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the report. I am concerned that the heading non-compliance and key management activities on page 88 through page 89 and the bullet points detailed there, I get an overwhelming feeling that there's a degree of drift in the organisation, that whilst you're doing your job, you're not getting various departments actually actively trying to implement the recommendations that you're putting forward. I don't think it's being taken seriously enough, and I think you really do need to get senior management engaged in this. I'm finding it unacceptable that you're having to report failures to provide timely and accurate information, insufficient detail, delivering notification of potential claims, growing vulnerability. You know, I mean, it's quite bleak what you're reporting to us, and I really don't see that there's it's no fault of yours, but somewhere you're delivering these reports to, you know, various departments, various managers. I don't think they're even paying lip service to it. I just don't think they're even attempting to comply. And you know, you're saying there's action plans. You can have all the action plans you want, all the action plans in the world. If you can't deliver it, it's pointless having an action plan.
And Councillor Headley, any other members, or did you want to come back on that?
The only thing that I can come back to that with is obviously I've met with two of the new executive directors and I have raised concerns about things. Obviously they're literally only just come into the organisation, so they're going to need some time to look at the setup of the organisation, where the issues are, and then obviously they can help us to address these issues.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, did you want to come back on that?
I said I don't think it's your fault. I think it's you produce these reports, you send them on to the various officers, departments, managers for their action, and I'm kind of getting the impression that you said there's been changes in staff. I mean, is that a contributing factor to the difficulty that you have getting compliance with your recommendations? I mean, is it the turnover in staff and the lack of resources that's causing the problem? Because if this carries on the way it is, if and when LGR takes place, the disaggregation of assets and picking up the pieces is going to be really difficult for officers that are charged with taking this forward in future. And I think there needs to be a buy-in at senior management that your recommendations are not only going to be taken seriously, but they're going to be actioned and dealt with within a reasonable timescale. Some of these, it's as I say, it's a recipe for drift. And if they don't start taking it seriously, frankly, you're wasting your time trying to report these things. If they're just ignoring, which seems to be the undercurrent in this, it's gone on for far too long, and I think I don't know whether the political leadership are taking it seriously or not, but I would like to see some evidence by the next report that the senior managers that are receiving your reports are taking it seriously, are addressing it, and there's progress being made on implementation of your recommendations.
Yeah, I thought I'd just speak to that. I mean, I think part of the seriousness of this has been the appointment of myself and the new executive director team. So, yeah, and that's part of. I've been here for 3 days, so I'm learning and I'm just finding out what's happening in the organisation. And obviously, we'll continue to drill down into this as part of the new executive director team, working closely with Tina. So. Yeah, I think it is clear from the organisation that we need to do more work around governance, and that's part of my remit, resources and governance, and therefore hope that we can give you some more positive updates going forward.
I don't want to concentrate on what's gone on in the past. What I'm really interested in is the progress we can make quickly in achieving compliance with the reports that officers keep putting in front of us, but it's always a tale of, well, it wasn't complied with. So I welcome, 3 days into Basildon, let's hope you last another 3 days.
So it'll last a lot longer than that, but welcome to Basildon. Councillor Myers.
Yeah, and I think it's quite correct. Obviously, going back to sort of Mike's report as well, where sort of continuous emails are being sent to chase up on stuff, and you know, I wasn't on the mic at the time, but I just briefly just said to Chris, and I'm sure they go automatically filed into another box that they've got, because it's clear that some of these audits and things, you know, if you're not getting responses and you're continually chasing, it is clearly an issue. And governance of local authorities is very, very important, especially as we are approaching if and when local government reorganisation already change in council. It is abundantly clear that governance arrangements and fraud issues and how you're dealing with risks which exist is down to the sort of the internal audit lot and the risk registers and the governance of how systems and services are meant to report and how they're meant to come back. And if there are failings to be found in terms of how systems are being done, but they need to be dealt with adequately and timely. Now, Councillor Headley alluded to, you know, perhaps an issue with time and officer capacity and resourcing to this, but it is clear that a lot of these recommendations, a lot of the action plans that are being, action plans have been produced, whether or not they are actually actioned, is something that we're going to have to keep a close eye on going forwards as a committee, whoever sits on it. I think that needs to be a takeaway for something, and we need to perhaps stick that in the work programme as well to see progress on these as well. And I welcome the executive director to his new job. Welcome to Basildon, and hopefully going forwards, whoever sits on here will have something in the work programme to actually see that some progress is being made. Because at the end of the day, we do oversee this, we do make our comments known, and we do make our concerns known. And I think it's important that managers, senior managers, are aware that compliance needs to be done. It's not something that just be thrown under the rug and said, oh, it can be brushed under the carpet and be dealt with another day. It needs to be taken seriously, as well as their service mandates, in order to preserve governance and sort of strategic vision going forwards.
Councillor Murphy.
Could we not highlight it in our report and ask the leader of the council and the CEO to have a look at this and maybe impress upon the senior management teams that this is more of a priority than it's being given, and everybody should pull their socks up a bit and get on with it? Would that not be, as we are supposed to report back, can that not be in part of our report? That we believe that perhaps the effort isn't being put in where it should do, allowing for the fact that we seem to be short of staff, allowing for the fact we seem to be very busy. I can understand why some things perhaps are not prioritised, but perhaps a look from the higher echelon down might be a good idea, and just to inform them that we feel that this is the case.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Murphy. I think that is something that we can look at and take away. Any other members on this one? Yeah, Councillor Broughton.
Yeah, I am here. As chair, you can make that instruction. You can demand that this is done, and you stamp your feet, show some gonads, you know what I mean, and start screaming on our behalf and say, I'm the chairman of this committee, I want this done, that done, and sort it out. Otherwise, you know, it's pointless you sitting up there. So just like, come on, get it sorted, young man. All right? Auntie Eunice is speaking to you.
Thank you, Councillor. I always happy to get advice from yourself. But yeah, I certainly am concerned that about things that we've been talking about tonight, and it is definitely something that we'll be taking away and looking at further. Any other members on this one? No. Okay, well, thank you very much, members. That item was also for noting. And now on to item number 8, which is the corporate risk management update, including the work of the Audit and Risk Committee Working Group, Q3, which is Sarah again.
Thank you. So this report provides an overview of the Council's risk management arrangements and the activities during Q3 of 25-26 and signposts further work planned for the remainder of the year. So the Council adopts a cautious to open risk appetite, recognising that some level of managed risk taking is necessary to achieve its strategic objectives. This means that the Council is willing to accept certain risks where decisions are made on an informed basis, supported by sound reasoning and effective controls. The significant risks that are above our risk appetite are detailed in enclosure number 1. These risks were reviewed by the corporate leadership team, and at this time there are no risks that require escalation to the Audit and Risk Committee. The corporate risks, which if they occurred are those which have a major impact on the organisation or delivery of its vision, are cross-cutting risks that impact more than one service. So we currently have 19 corporate risks on our risk register, which are on enclosure number 2. The ones that are currently red are our project management, organisational transformation and pace of change, cyber security, devolution and LGR, and service disruption and reputational damage during the housing repairs transition. There's also a number of risks that have implications on the Council's governance arrangements, and as such they have already been reflected in the AGS action plan to ensure that appropriate focus and improvement activity is undertaken. So these relate to partnership relationships, information governance, local plan and performance management. Finally then, so we've had 3 working groups already this year looking at a number of key areas such as our access to private sector accommodation, replacement of the Civica housing management system, failure to meet targets for the waste strategy, climate change, trees, and we've also looked at the limited audit for mist collections. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Any members want to comment on this one? Yeah, Councillor.
I actually went down to Barleylands the other day and had it was shown the in-cab technology and what it can do, and had a very interesting and entertaining hour with James Hendry and his men. And looking at the system, now it's fully implemented, I will predict that that area will improve dramatically from what I can see. It was very interesting, very informative. The equipment is extremely good, and I can report to this committee that the council made a very good move in that area by getting that equipment and installing it, and I think it will produce very good tidings in the future. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I think 4 years ago when I first joined the council, I was on the environment committee back when it was the old committee system, and I remember us at one of our first meetings we were talking about it then. So it's great to see that the in-cab technology has been implemented and it is making improvements already. Any other members wish to comment on this one? No? Well,
Just to pick up on your point there, we're currently undertaking a piece of work on looking at in-cab technology. We've got an audit review ongoing at the moment, so we'll be able to feedback to this committee at a later date in terms of actually how well it's working.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. Looking forward to that one. But yeah, I've got no other comments on that item. Then that one's for noting. Thank you. And then on to item number 9, which is the work programme 2025-26. Chloe, do you want to introduce us?
Thank you, Chair. So we've got the work programme for 25-26. I believe there's an additional item to add for April, which will be the chairman's annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Look forward to that one. Councillor Myers?
And just separately on the work programme, rather than for this committee, a briefing to be organised to go through Treasury Management.
Yeah, we'll take that offline and get that in the diary. Councillor Headley?
Yeah, can I just make it clear that I think the reports that are before us tonight have been well constructed, well written, and they're very informative. So there's no criticism of the officers supporting this committee tonight. Where I do want to see an improvement is in the cooperation that they get when they issue those reports. I think they're entitled to more support when they issue these reports, and I think we should follow up to support them in making sure that whoever their reports go to are taking them seriously, and that these action plans have a, if you like, a proper timetable for delivery.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. Any other members? Councillor Myers?
Yeah, I suppose go back to the previous meeting where I requested that a letter from yourself in correspondence with Mike and his team and with Sarah as well is circulated to us to feedback on, obviously, the send to senior management about what we've been discussing over the last year and how we feel like governance can be improved.
Yeah, we can take that one offline as well. Any other members on the work programme? No? Well then, in that case, that one's for noting too, so thank you very much.